Luka, a 55-year-old man nicknamed Trabant, is playing music at a funeral in a church. As coffee boiled in a kettle, they heard a noise. A woman named Clara joined, holding a music book and singing for the mourners and giving flowers to the corpse. Luka secretly touched her back with the stick, even trying to open her dress, which his friends noticed. After singing, Clara called Luka a pig and told him to grow up and leave. A crew member asked for coffee, but Luka declined, saying he had another job. The man admired Luka for having multiple jobs and lent him 100 crowns, which Luka promised to repay Monday. Luka hurried to his other job, where Broz waited, asking why he was late. Luka started playing immediately. After the funeral, Broz gave him a ride, and they discussed buying a used car costing about $25,000. They saw girls walking, glanced at them, but the girls didn't notice. At home, Luka, feeling lonely, starts calling the women he knows. Unfortunately, none of them were available. In a graveyard, Luka met a woman named Zubata visiting a grave. He offered to restore the inscriptions for 180 crowns using gold dust. She thought it was expensive, but he showed his materials and said she was lucky to not have 2 T's in her name, saving 5 crowns. While he was there, his friend called him for work. He left Zubata to go back to the church. Back at the church, Luka played music while Clara sang. She seemed to want him to touch her back again, but Luka is focused on the music, containing his urge. Later, at Luka's place, Luka and Clara are in bed, talking. Clara said she'd waited 2 years since Haikova's funeral. Luka said it was awful to wait that long, but she said measuring time by funerals was worse. She asked if he'd ever married. Luka said his late father believed music meant celibacy. While talking, Luka touched her and Clara hiccuped. He told her to bite her pinky and lift her legs, but she failed. She then heard and asked Luka why the pigeons were sharpening their beaks. Luka pauses as if he is thinking and answers that pigeons were sharpening their beaks on the windowsill to make them sharp. Later, Luka was restoring a grave's writing with gold dust when friends Ladek and Broz arrived with a truck. Broz gave him several orders, 3 in gold, 2 in silver, and a paper with details. Luka thanked him and continued painting. Broz asked about a play Luka had performed abroad, and Luka shared his New York experience for Ladek's sake. In the church, when Luka and the team played at a funeral, Clara and Luka looked each other in the eye. Luka winks at her, and she acknowledges it with a subtle smile. Later, at Broz's place, Luka and Broz sit for a talk. Luka reminded him that he owed him 37,600 crowns. He also said he needed a car to earn more. Broz told him they could sort out the car problem. Luka wondered how he could pay for it, and Broz proposed an idea for a job that could help him make money like he had never seen before, 30,000 per day's work. As they talk, Broz's young daughter comes to them holding a pet and tells her dad that Andy, the pet she is holding, has a tick and it is really big. Broz asked her to give it to him and held it. Then the daughter asked Luka if he had a pet and he replied that he didn't. She also asked if he had a kid and he replied that he didn't. Broz then told Luka the job was marriage. He said he had an aunt and the job is to marry her, but Luka replied he'd never marry his aunt. Broz explained she was Russian and it was her niece he meant. Luka said her being Russian makes it worse. Broz said it would be a fake marriage, but Luka was generally against marriage, but Broz said he'd be divorced after 6 months, and that the girl needed check papers to avoid being sent back to Russia. While talking, Broz's wife appeared holding a pet. She eyed them suspiciously, took Andy, and left. Broz mentions the wedding would be just for show. The girl would pay Luka 40,000 crowns, enough for a car, and still have 20,000 left, better than renovating headstones. Luka noticed Broz's house full of pets. Broz said a gravedigger needed living things around him. Broz once again brought back their earlier discussion. He said the girl's name was Nadezhda. Broz extends his hand to seal the agreement. Luka then shakes his friend's hand and tells him that the job is not for him. Later, Luka visited his mother, who was giving a piano lesson to a girl. Seeing him, she sends the girl she is teaching away until the next day. They hugged while she asked why he hadn't visited more. She tells him she'd made potato dumplings for lunch. Excited, her son is there. Luka looks at framed pictures of the family. He then asked if his brother, Vitolka, had written. His mother said yes, and that the letter was in the bureau. She wanted him to read it aloud, but he postponed. She thought he hated his brother. Luka said his brother left them. His mother defends his brother, saying Vitolka was doing well for his job. While serving food, she said Luka would have money again as a virtuoso player. She mentioned Mr. Holacek said the gutters were rusted and needed 2,000 crowns for repairs. Luka said he was broke, had to sell his car, and was in debt. His mother reassured him, saying the house was his, and he'd saved it from the state by buying his brother's share. Later, Luka climbed a ladder outside while his mother watched. Mrs. Lukova passed by and teased him about fiddling for corpses. Luka joked back about squeaking for gallbladder patients, and she left. Luka explained to his mother about the dead audience at their performance, relating it to what he saw in the gutters. While digging plants, he found a piece of jewelry. His mother said it looked like costume jewelry. Luka took it to a buyer. The man checks the jewelry and offers 5 or 10 crowns. Luka thought the offer is low, so he thanked him and left. Outside in the rain, Luka showed the jewelry to Broz. During their talk, Luka agreed to the marriage idea. The two sit for lunch with Tamara and Nadezhda herself. Tamara starts teasing him, saying he could speak to Nadezhda in German, who was an interpreter between German and Russian. Broz was happy about the arrangement. Luka couldn't speak either language, but Broz said it was like Czech. Since Luka couldn't speak Russian, Broz assured him of no tricks, and that the marriage would end in divorce in 6 months. Tamara said Nadezhda had a 5-year-old son, and by age, Luka could be his father. Nadezhda said the wedding needed to be real to avoid suspicion. After the agreement, they gave Luka a down payment. At the wedding, Luka and Nadezhda wore wedding clothes and had a church ceremony. The ceremony looks completely real, completed with a bride and groom kiss. A friend whispered to Luka that his wife was beautiful. Luka calls the friend after. He is nervous that he had been seen. He tells him to keep what he saw a secret because he doesn't want anyone to know. But it was too late. Emin had already told others. After the church ceremony, the groom and the bride, huddled in a car, go to the next phase, the party. The party is lively and fun. Luka drank heavily and yelled that he liked his wife, and they had a beautiful wedding night. Tamara said it was a joke, but Luka keeps going, saying a Czech man would never deny his Russian wife. Broz attempts to keep Luka quiet. When that fails, he attempts to make the guests leave, but that doesn't work either. At this time, a pregnant woman entered and told them the baby was coming, and everyone left with her. Luka is left alone. Later, Luka hears water dripping at night. He calls for Nadezhda, but there is no answer, so he goes back to sleep. The next day, Luka drove his new car to his mother's house. She admired it and said such cars never get dusty. They talked about Russians in the street and how Czechs traded Russian diesel, gasoline, and coal. His mother recalled when the Russians invaded, people swore not to give them even stale bread, but now things were fine. On the way home, Luka saw Clara waiting for a lift. He offered her a ride. She refused at first, but then accepted. Clara compliments the car, but she clearly is upset that he got married. Luka said his marriage wasn't serious and that he lived alone. She then blamed herself for their divorce. When Luka invited her to come home with him, she declined and insisted on getting out, so he dropped her off and went home alone. Later at his place, the woman who cleaned his house told him she had done all his washing and ironing. She told him he needed to put up the flags in the window, as people were judging. She said they needed 1 Russian flag and 1 Czech so people would leave them in peace. She said it would be 70 crowns and added it to the 200 he already owed her. Luka gave her more money than he owed, and she was surprised. She said she had no change, but he told her to keep it. While going into his room, Luka saw a woman called Blanka. She smiled and told him that Mr. Stoklasa sent her. Luka was happy, opened the door, and took her in. She carried an instrument to play, so Luka takes her to his house. After they entered, Luka asked her what Mr. Stoklasa's message was. She told him that she wanted Luka to look her over and hear her play. Luka gives her a drink. Luka asked her to show him what she played. She holds her violin, sits down, and starts playing. Luka got close and looked into her eyes, which made her shy. Then his phone rang, it was Braz calling. Luka, upset, told Blanka that he had to leave and they would do it another day. He gently touched her face and left. Later in the bar, Luka met Braz. Braz talked to him secretly, whispering that he should come to the green tree. While they walked, Luka jokingly asked if they were staying or leaving, and playfully said Braz was a spy or a gravedigger as a hobby. They sat down, and Braz told him they had a big problem. Nadezhda had emigrated to Germany to follow a man she was crazy about. He told Luka they weren't allowed to go there. Russians could come here, but they couldn't go there. Since Nadezhda had checked papers because of Luka, she had managed to leave. Braz continued, saying she even left her son behind. Luka responded carelessly, saying it wasn't their problem. Braz explained that the police would get involved. Luka became sad and told Braz he had a bad feeling about the marriage from the start. Braz told him to stay calm, that the son would stay with his aunt and be fine. Luka asked when the police would come. Braz tells him they'd be there soon. Later, Luka was at home playing his instrument when he heard a knock. At the door were two men in white uniforms. They told him they brought his son and that the woman with the child was in the ambulance downstairs. She told them to give the child to him. Luka told them he was only the boy's grandfather, but they left the boy in his box, saying it was his own problem. Luka called Nadezhda's son to come into the house, but the boy didn't respond. Then Luka picked up his box, and the boy followed him. Luka called Braz to tell him that the boy was with him and said this was not part of the deal. Braz told him that problems like this couldn't be solved over the phone and advised him to give the boy a bath and put him to bed, saying one night wouldn't kill him. Luka asked the boy whether he had slippers, but the boy didn't respond. He was looking at the ground. Then Luka gave him indoor shoes and told him to take off his outdoor shoes, but the boy wasn't listening. Luka became angry. Later, Luka told the boy, Kolya, to draw something by showing him a drawing, but Kolya didn't respond and kept staring out the window. Luka placed him in a chair in front of the window and told him to look outside. Kolya became interested upon seeing the pigeons outside. Later, they sat for a meal. Luka told Kolya to eat, but Kolya didn't respond. Luka became angry once again. He added that even if Kolya didn't understand Czech, he should still recognize tea. After Luka turned back to wash the glass and returned, he saw Kolya drinking the tea. Later, they lay in bed, Luka reading. Kolya keeps crying, not willing to let Luka comfort him. In the morning, Luka and Kolya go to church. Luka offered his hand while crossing the road, but Kolya refused. Luka and Braz met in the church. Kolya toured the place and looked interested. Braz told Luka that his wife, Maris, was against the wedding and that he couldn't take the child to his home because there were already many children there. Luka said he couldn't manage alone. Braz offered to deduct 2,000 crowns from what Luka owed him, but Luka refused, even when Braz raised it to 3,000 and then 4,000. Finally, Braz told Luka that keeping the child would benefit him. If the police came, it would help him defend himself. He also said Luka's aunt would be out of the hospital in a week, and that the police had already spoken to him and would surely come for Luka too. Later, during a funeral in the church, the orchestra played while Clara sang, and Kolya observed everything calmly. Luka and Kolya returned to Luka's home. The landlady reminded Luka to put up the flags. Luka told her he was busy and performed concerts daily. She reminded him again that he was the only one who hadn't done it, while the others had. She noticed Kolya and asked who the little boy was. Luka told her he was his nephew. The woman tried to speak to Kolya, but he didn't respond. Ignoring that, she reminded Luka again about the flag. In the house, Luka was putting up the flags in the window. Kolya saw them and said, "Ours and yours," pointing to the flags. While changing Kolya's clothes, Luka told him that he would leave once his aunt was out of the hospital. They talked about Russians. Kolya said their flag was beautiful. Luka replied that the flag might be beautiful, but not the people. Luka gave Kolya a Russian egg while they were eating. A knock at the door made Kolya run excitedly, thinking it was his grandmother, but it turned out to be Blanka. She had come to continue their music session. Luka said it was fine and casually introduced Kolya as the child of a colleague from Leningrad. Blanka showed a warm interest in the boy and began speaking to him in Russian. Luka, slightly nervous, discreetly removed the flag from the window. Blanka began playing her instrument as Kolya watched from the table. Still eating, Luka noticed the boy's attention and felt a bit uneasy. Finally, Kolya sits with them to watch Blanka play. Later, Kolya was given a bath and came out on his own, wrapped in a towel. He walked into the room, accidentally revealing the hidden flag. Blanka and Luka were about to get intimate, and Luka is not happy with the interruption. From bed, Blanka laughed at the scene, amused by Luka's attempt at subtlety. The following day, Luka took Kolya to the hospital to ask about Tamara. A nurse removed the child from the room before the doctor informed Luka that Tamara had passed away the day before and no one had come for her things. Luka left the hospital feeling a heavy sense of loss and helplessness. While walking, Kolya asked about his grandmother. Luka gave a gentle explanation, framing it in a way that didn't disturb him. When Kolya saw an image of a child holding an adult's hand, he quietly reached for Luka's. In church, Luka spoke with a friend about his situation, unaware that Clara was listening nearby. Kolya sat drawing, quietly observing the activity around him. Luka's friend suggested enrolling the boy in kindergarten, but Luka expressed doubts about managing that along with his work. The funeral began, and Kolya continued to take everything in with silent curiosity. Later, they visited a kindergarten to register. Luka completed the paperwork, and a staff member mentioned that the process would go through social services. Kolya appeared uneasy watching the other children and didn't want to join them. Luka then brought Kolya to his mother's house. He gave a vague explanation, saying the boy was from Yugoslavia and was just spending time in the Czech countryside. She asked the boy's name, and Luka offers a harmless explanation. During the meal, he asked if Kolya could stay for a while to enjoy the fresh air and keep her company. She expressed disbelief that someone would abandon their child and reminded Luka knew that music and family often didn't go hand in hand. After this, Luka spent time building a play area with toys to make Kolya feel welcome. While looking through the window, Luka's mother mentioned the constant presence of soldiers driving past. Kolya, hearing this, called them ours, which confused her. She clarified that they were Russian soldiers, not theirs. Kolya continued with strange phrases like Russian soldier king, then wandered outside. As Luka worked on decorating the playhouse, Kolya was given a cape by the soldiers outside. When Luka's mother saw this, she confronted him, saying he had lied about the boy. Luka relented and tried to explain that not all Russians were the same. Soldiers knocked soon after, asking for water. Luka's mother turned them away, claiming the tap was off. After they left, Kolya turned it on and found it working. His confusion was clear. His grandmother admitted she didn't want a Russian child in the house. Luka told Kolya they would be staying with Uncle Ruzika instead. As they left, his mother reminded him of how he had claimed to never want children, especially not a Russian one, and compared him unfavorably to his brother Vitolka. At Ruzika's place, Kolya seemed hesitant at first, but began playing as the space became familiar. Luka and Ruzika spoke nearby, and Ruzika recounted a strange prophecy from a psychic involving communists, gold, nurses, and humiliation. That night, Luka and Kolya lay in bed. The boy asked questions about the soldiers, and Luka answered simply, offering what comfort he could. The next day, they went to see a Russian film at the cinema. With no other children present, the screening was canceled. Kolya was heartbroken. Luka, seeing his disappointment, bought 5 tickets to meet the minimum and watched the movie with him. Kolya was overjoyed, and Luka quietly shared in that joy. Back at home, Kolya again asked about his grandmother, and Luka gave the same gentle answer. When they reached their apartment, the landlady complained about the decorations and handed him a letter from the police, casually mentioning it might be about parking. Luka takes the paper and heads home. After that, he gave Kolya a wash, and they both went to sleep. The next day, Luka brought Kolya to the police station and explained to Officer Pokorny that he had no one else to look after the child. Pokorny, slightly amused, pointed out that even he didn't bring his own children to work. Inside, they were joined by a girl named Jitka, who was asked to take care of Kolya. The boy resisted, and Luka explained that the language barrier made it difficult to leave him with strangers. Kolya was given a pencil and paper, and he began to draw quietly. The conversation turned to Luka's sudden marriage at his age. He explained it as a foolish decision, something that happens when people get older. Captain Novotny, who had been eavesdropping, eventually joined them. He accused Luka of being a bad example, linking him to others who had left the country. He asked whether Luka and his wife had lived together. Luka said they had, briefly, but parted due to cultural differences. She couldn't stop opening the windows, used to Siberian winters. When asked if he was paid for the marriage, Luka denied it and said his car was paid for through loans from friends. He claimed not to know about the boy or that the woman would leave. He insisted he wanted to care for the child. Kolya, clearly unsettled, clung to Luka during the exchange. The captain dismissed Luka's story as nonsense and sent him home to reconsider his version of the truth. Outside the station, Kolya unexpectedly spoke in Czech, catching Luka off guard. They went shopping for shoes. On the bus ride, Kolya began playing with a dog while Luka chatted with a woman. Distracted, he got off the bus and forgot Kolya inside. Realizing the mistake, Luka ran back in a panic, but the bus had already moved. At the next station, he reported the lost child. Kolya had gotten off separately and was searching as well, clearly upset. Eventually, they found each other and hugged tightly. Later, Kolya played on the ice with another child while Luka spoke with Braz. Braz mentioned that Kolya's mother had applied for her son through official channels, which now had international attention. That evening, Kolya sat in the bathtub and pretending to speak to his grandmother. Moved by this, Luka phoned Zuzi to read him a bedtime story. Kolya fell asleep listening, and Luka quietly appreciated the small moment of peace. The next day, Luka played his violin while Kolya watched pigeons and later began singing as he drew. He even described what he was doing as his job and proudly showed off a drawing made by a girl. Luka took him to a photo session afterward. That night, Kolya became ill. Luka called Klara, who helped treat him with antibiotics. As the boy rested, Luka and Klara spoke about parenthood and his past. Klara asked how he had become so nurturing, and Luka admitted he didn't know. He was just as surprised as anyone. They shared a meal and a quiet connection, eventually kissing. Kolya stirred briefly, but fell back asleep. Later, when Kolya asked for another bedtime story, Luka couldn't reach Zuzi and ended up telling one himself. In the following days, Luka and Kolya spent time near the river. They talked about birthdays, though Luka didn't know his birth date. When Kolya's birthday finally came, Luka gifted him a small violin. That same day, Zubata from Social Security visited. She reviewed Luka's initial application and questioned his ability to care for the boy. Luka explained the application had been made early on, when he had no idea how to look after a child. Zubata said the mother seemed disinterested, but Luka corrected her, saying the mother had contacted the Red Cross. Zubata added that Soviet officials were still concerned and would return with embassy representatives. Luka made plans to leave for his uncle's house. Kolya asked if they were moving, and Luka said they needed to leave before Zubata returned. That night, they drove to Uncle Hudek's home. When they arrived, Hudek welcomed them and gave them blankets, commenting on the arrival of spring. Luka introduced Kolya, lightly joking about the uncle's name and claiming there was power in the letter H. Kolya gave Luka a kiss and went to sleep. Later, Hudek and Luka spoke. Hudek offered to hide them, saying he'd done the same during the war. He called it his way of joining the resistance. Luka asked whether his conductor might hire him again, and Haudek said he would. The next day, they all played music, with Kolya joining in on the violin. Later that night, Haudek said the police had blocked the city center. University students were calling for demonstrations. People were gathering, waving flags, and church bells rang loudly. There was talk of people being pushed aside, as if history were repeating itself. On the day Russian troops returned, Nadezhda arrived. Luka took Kolya to the airport. Nadezhda thanked him repeatedly and offered him money, but he refused. As they walked, Kolya said goodbye and asked him not to forget. Later, Luka played the violin again. Clara stood nearby, watching. She gently touched her stomach, revealing without words that she was pregnant.